Hello, all you wonderful people. What is up? Welcome to another edition of Polarized Perspectives. And we're going to get right into it today because we have two very important topics to discuss. First up, the U.S. military operation in Venezuela. So, what had happened was in the early hours of the morning on January 3rd, just a few days ago from the time of this recording, U.S. military forces went into Venezuela, went into President Nicolas Maduro's residence where they apprehended him and his wife, Celia Flores, on narco terrorism charges. That's what we know at this point, at the time of this recording. More may come out, but that's the basis of what we know of at this point. So, where do we go from here? Basically, what we're hearing around the world is the people of Venezuela are relatively happy with this outcome. Nicolas Maduro, for those of you who are not aware, was a very authoritarian leader, led with kind of an oligarchy type thing where him and his close allies, reaped the benefits, the rewards of what the country had produced, primarily oil. And so the people of Venezuela are happy because they had voted out Maduro in their last election and he refused to vacate, he refused to step down. So when you have a leader like that who just refuses to step down, stays in power despite them being, voted out through a supposed, you know, democratic institution, and you have that type of outcome. So they're happy he's gone. Um, Other kind of authoritarian places in, Latin America, South America, like Cuba, for example, Colombia, both those places are not happy. Well, and by those places, I mean the leaders of those countries, of Cuba, Colombia, et cetera. They are not happy with another country, the United States, entering Venezuela, without any type of heads up to anyone else around the world and capturing a world leader. So they're not happy about that. There's a bit of a mixed reaction here in the US. Some people are really happy that, you know, a quite frankly, a despot, a bad leader is no longer in charge of a nation. So I think people in the US are happy that, an authoritarian leader is not in charge. The issue becomes, well, a couple different issues. One, some people are upset, and that's how I should have prefaced the second part here. Some people in the US are upset about the fact that there was no heads up to the other branches, well, primarily Congress, about this type of operation. As Secretary of State Rubio had stated, this is the type of initiative that does not require congressional approval, and it's dependent upon several different factors, one of which being like the environment and weather and all that. So there's no way of giving a heads up if they themselves don't even know if the operation can take place, and it's something that does not require congressional approval. That being said, some people are still upset that there was no heads up given um, prior to this operation taking place. So you have that in mind. Now, you also have some people in the US who are upset over this operation because they're like, okay, you've removed a world leader from power of a country. What's the plan now? Because, quite frankly, to speak honestly here, the United States does have a spotty track record over getting involved in some type of operation in another country that includes maybe removing a world leader from power who is authoritarian, should be removed, but they remove that person from power, or they occupy another country or get involved in some type of institution operation in another country for their resources, for example. uh, what's the plan now? You've done part one. You've removed a world leader, authoritarian. What are you going to do for that country now to get them back into a democratic state? And this is where a lot of people still have questions, myself included, because you have implemented for now the vice president of the country of Venezuela, um, Delcy Rodriguez. I want to make sure I got the name right. Had to look there. Delcy Rodriguez as acting leader of the nation of Venezuela. So keep in mind, She was Maduro's vice president. What's to say that she's not going to prevent, further democratization of the country? Uh, Again, this is just me spitballing here, but when you have the vice president of a president who was authoritarian, who's to say that she may not be the same? So there are questions there, especially when it comes time for, at the end of the plan, when the US is like, okay, time to fully transition over. Is she going to fully cooperate? That's my big question here. Is there going to be full cooperation? But setting that aside, who's running the nation with her in the interim here? Because if you listen to the press conference where President Trump and there were several people behind him who also spoke, he pointed behind him. He was like, these people are running the country of Venezuela. And you could see Secretary of State Rubio like looking off screen, like, what? Me? Uh, with all due fairness to Marco Rubio, he has like 10 different jobs already. I don't think he wants this one as well. But again, that's staying put kind of where it is. There are questions there because is he running it? Is Secretary Hegseth running it? Who's really, and then that's the other part of it too. Like, you need all of your cabinet members, all of your secretaries, all of your important personnel here in the US to help guide you with domestic and foreign policy. So you can't have them directly in Venezuela running the country. Who's doing the ground, the ground to ground, day to day basis operations for how the country is run? So there are still a lot of questions there, still a lot of unanswered aspects. Granted, again, I think a lot of people agree that Maduro should have been removed from power, should be brought up on these types of charges, and we will see how it goes. Justice will be served um, based on what we found here. It's just a matter of how do you move forward with the next step? How do you make sure that the country is run properly, effectively, and efficiently? The second big story I want to get to today is that Tim Walz has announced that he is not running for re-election for governor of Minnesota. This news just broke a couple hours ago on my end. Of course, I know that the video will probably get up a couple days later, but just so you know, at the time that I'm recording this, this is relatively breaking news. This is new news. This happened just a couple hours ago. And honestly, it's honestly a mess what's going on in politics right now. So this all stems from the fact that Minnesota is being investigated by the Department of Justice at the federal level for supposed Somali run daycare, childcare fraud. And allegedly, supposedly, what's taking place is that there are Somali run daycares in Minneapolis and the areas around Minneapolis who are supposedly offering childcare, a daycare for children, but there are no children there to take care of. Allegedly, this is what's taking place. And this is an investigation that started during the previous administration. This started with Merrick Garland as Attorney General. Now, obviously, you have Pam Bondi as Attorney General, Kash Patel running the FBI, different names in these places. And so the investigation has taken a turn. Now, supposedly, again, we don't have the full details because it's an active investigation, of course, but what has supposedly taken place in the previous investigation under Merrick Garland was that Minneapolis daycare centers in general were being investigated. Now we have expanded the investigation to be, Minneapolis and then around Minneapolis. Like, there are a lot more daycare centers for children being investigated because the thing that's missing here, the key piece, is that they are still receiving government subsidies to take care of children. You have a daycare for children, the government provides you subsidies. However, if you're not housing children, or not housing, but you're not taking care of children, you're not providing any type of care for them during the day, you have no children to take care of at these facilities, why are you getting paid? And so that's the question people have. I'm not necessarily, asserting that one way or another what's happening here, but keep in mind it's an active investigation. I'm not going to comment my honest thoughts on an active investigation. I want to wait for the legal process to play out. I want to see all the facts in front of me before I kind of make my own opinion here. But allegedly, this is a big issue if what's taking place is accurate. So, why is this a big deal here? Well, now a lot of people are laying blame at the feet of Tim Walz. I'm going to paraphrase here, but the sentiments are along the lines of, you fell asleep at the wheel. How could you allow this to happen? What are we doing here? And although Tim Walz himself is not being personally investigated, I do want to make that absolutely clear. Tim Walz, as of right now, is not being actively investigated. However, this is a matter of negligence. A lot of people are like, this is your state. You're in charge of the people in your state. You're in charge of these programs. You need to be on top of this. You need to know what you're doing. And again, this is not me talking. This is other people criticizing him, but they're like, and you're not. So there's that. The other part of it is, I don't know if I've already mentioned this, but this was a multi-year uh, scheme. If what took place was absolutely true, this was a multi-year thing. This wasn't just 1 year, this was several years. We're talking here where 9 billion with a B billion dollars were allegedly stolen from the federal government. Again, you're given this money to provide childcare, daycare for children, however you say that, but there are no children. So what's the money being used for? And you don't have the money, so where'd it go? So there are questions here. Again, we're going to wait for the investigation to conclude. We're going to wait for, everything to be unsealed. But I wanted to make this news story kind of available here. It's been a weird cyclical type thing with the news cycle with this one because this was a story back when Merrick Garland investigated it. Not a huge story, did not break any headlines, but it was out there like maybe like a year and a half, close to 2 years, somewhere in that time frame. Um, but it was like a small news story back then. Now it's even bigger when, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, now in charge, are doing this investigation. So now it's a story there, but people are upset in the public because news outlets, big news outlets, primarily are not reporting this as much as people allege that they should. So that's another thing here too. It's a matter of, should news outlets report on stories of this nature where, you know, you reported on it before, it went away, now it's coming back, that type of thing. Uh, but that's another, element of this topic as well is, what's kind of all happening here. I really hope you enjoyed this content today. I really hope you learned something from it. I hope you found it informative. If you did, please do me the biggest of favors. Leave a like, please. There we go. Leave a like. Please subscribe to the channel and comment down below if you learned something new from this, your own take on these stories, any other stories that you find fascinating that you want me to look into. I'm more than happy to. And so with that, I hope you found this informative. I hope you find my content entertaining. I love doing this. I love providing content. This is what I enjoy doing, providing the news and political content and my own kind of insights to what's going on here. So if you enjoyed this, please like, please subscribe, please comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.